Hi guys, it's Tracy here, and I have a strange haul-ish video. I was going to do a tutorial on what to do when your thin wafer dies won't cut all the way through your manual die cutting machine. And I thought I had a really great example of that because this is a die that I had bought when it was actually back, so it says copyright 2012. And I think this was back when Simon Says Stamp just first started making these dies. Maybe they were making them before that and this is just when I discovered them, but I was really excited about these when I first found out about them. So I bought this. This is like a little die that cuts this shape. And I was making a lot of mini albums back then, and I thought that this shape would make a really cute little layer because the hexagons on it, don't mind my nails, I know they're awful. I've been cleaning up my house and there was a lot of drama in my scrap room today with a mouse and ants, and if I shriek, I'll try to cut that part out of this video because a mouse was caught and some of the ants were caught, but I don't know, I don't feel 100% calm in this room anymore. But anyways, just been kind of busy around the house all day today, haven't had a chance to do my nails. I'm hoping to do them tonight. Anyhow, this is a really cute little die. I thought it would be great back when I was making mini albums for a little layer, and even now with 12 by 12s I think that it will make a really great layer. So I bought this and I immediately took it out and used it, and it didn't cut all the way through the paper, and I don't have the example, but I ran it through lots of times and I'm pretty sure I would have used it properly, but maybe I didn't because I just ran it through now and it works fine. So I've been not using it. So what happened was I contacted Simon Says Stamp right away when it wasn't working properly, and I said this die doesn't cut all the way through, and they were really great about it and said send it back and we'll send you another one or you can get your money back. I forget exactly what they said, but they were going to take care of it for me. But of course, me being me, I just never did send it back, and I thought, well, I should be able to get it work with some shims. And then my scrapbooking evolved and I wasn't making mini albums quite as often, and then I just kind of forgot about it, and every time that I clean up or reorganize my dies, I always pull it out and I always think, oh man, I should figure out how I can get that die working. And I was pretty sure that I would be able to get it working with just a couple of shims. So what I mean by shims is when you're cutting with your Big Shot, you use this platform, and it says that this is what you do for a wafer thin dies. So you use tab 2 and tab 1, and if you're using thicker things like an embossing folder, you just use the main platform, and if you're using other kinds of embossing folders, so this is what you use for nestability embossing with a tan mat and 1 chipboard shim is what I was using. So I kind of wrote myself some cheat sheet notes here about what I needed to use for which things that I have. So anyhow, maybe I had the wrong tab, but I know that I tried it on multiple occasions, and so I doubt that I know that I could have made that mistake once or twice, but I don't think that I would have consistently made that mistake. But who knows, I guess. Because today I ran it through to see what kind of a shim I would need, and lo and behold, it worked perfectly. It worked perfectly even in really heavy cardstock. So I don't know what the deal was, but I haven't been using it all this time because I thought it didn't work. So now I have a new old die that I'm going to start incorporating into my layers. With this, I'm going to show you how it cuts. So when you first run it through, this is on thin cardstock, so this was what I first ran it through on just to see how it would cut. When you first run it through, all the little hexagons stay in their places, and so I have, where did I put it? I have this little tool. You could use any kind of paper piercer or poker or anything, but I have this, which was a rub-on tool from American Crafts. And I forget where I got this. It might have come in a set of tools or something. I wouldn't have bought this just for what it is, but it's got this surface here for rubbing on rub-ons. I never use it for that though. It's just kind of sat around in my tool caddy for a really long time. So what I do is I just kind of go like this and poke each one of those out, and I just do it like as fast as I can, like this, and the little pieces of hexagon confetti go flying everywhere, and that's okay. So I just kind of do that until it's all clean and clear, and then this is what it looks like when all of the pieces are out of it. See how it looks like a strip of punchinella? I bet this would make a really nice stencil for some mixed media, even though it's paper and it wouldn't hold up very much to wet things. I think it still would be a really cool stencil. So anyhow, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is what it cuts out, and this is Stampin' Up! Cardstock, which is fairly thick. It's one of the thickest cardstocks. So if it will cut this well out of Stampin' Up! Cardstock, I'm thinking this cuts pretty darn good. So, pretty darn well. So, there's that. What I was going to show you guys today was I was going to experiment with what kind of shims I might need to get the cut that I was looking for. It turned out I didn't need any shims to get the cut that I was looking for, but I'm going to show you what I would have done anyways. So if this wasn't cutting well, I would have taken this and this on my paper and this, and then I have these shims. So there are a couple of them. This is a shim I had. It's made out of like a box board. So I think it came from a cereal box or something. No, it wasn't a cereal box, but it came from its cereal box weight chipboard. So it's thinner than your standard chipboard. It's very thin. So anyhow, but it's thicker than cardstock. So this is, you see it says Cuttlebug shim on it. I used to have a Cuttlebug before I had my Big Shot. I sold my Cuttlebug and got my Big Shot, and this was the shim that I used to use. I just held on to the shim because it still works, even though it's slightly smaller than the platform. It still works for most dies. So I was going to put this right there and then run it through, and I'm not going to do that right now because it will be too tight of a fit, because it fits perfectly and cuts really well just like this. So I'm not going to run it through with this, or I'm afraid that I'll stretch out my machine. Don't want to do that. So that's what I would have done if it wasn't cutting properly. The other thing that I've done is I have 2 pieces of cardstock that I've just pre-cut to the size of my Big Shot platform. So if you have a different machine, you pre-cut your shims to the size of your own platforms. This is a piece of Stampin' Up! Cardstock, and so these 2 together are less than this. So I could run it through with this. You always want to use the smallest shim possible so that you don't make your machine. I think that if you kind of like jam too much stuff through it, it will loosen up, and then you'll need to put more shims in for other things too. So you don't want to use shims unless if you're cutting something and it's not cutting all the way through, and start with just 1 piece of cardstock, run it through, and if that cuts, then fine, just always use 1 cardstock for that die, and if it doesn't, then add another piece of cardstock, run it through, and if it cuts then that's fine. If it doesn't, I would replace these 2 and move up to this one, run that through. If it cuts fine, if not, then add 1 of these. If not, add 1 of these. I also have this piece of thicker chipboard that you can use as a shim as well. I have never had to use it, but I kept it. It actually came with one of those Big's steel rule dies, so I just hung on to it to use as a shim. It's longer because it's for the extended cutting platform. So anyhow, that's how I would suggest that you use shims if your dies aren't cutting through clean. I can't emphasize enough, use the smallest shim that you possibly can. That's why I'm not going to demonstrate here, because any of these shims would be too much, because this is cutting well just as it is with the things that are on this. And the reason that we're shimming is that if this runs through and it's not cut properly, it's just that there wasn't enough pressure pushing down on it. So just adding a little something will make this a slightly bit thicker, and that might be just what you need to get a good cut, and just kind of keep adding and adding. The other tip that I will give you is that if something requires shims, what I used to do, and I don't use all the same dyes anymore, so I got rid of a lot of my dyes, but what I used to do is I would write either on the packaging or even on the dye itself. I used to write 2 shims or something like that right on it, 2 cardstock shims. Just so that I could remember what I needed to cut this, back when I had a selection of dyes. So the good news is that my dye works. The bad news is that I can't show you the tutorial for how to fix it, but I think I just walked you through it. So the reason that I even got onto this whole idea of pulling this dye back out again is because Mary Tran, she posted on my Facebook group about this dye. She showed this really cute picture of a Project Life card that was decorated with a die cut from this dye. And I loved it. And she said, it's one of these dyes. So I went online and I saw it and I was like, oh no, that's like this, which at the time I thought didn't work. So I thought, oh, but I really, really love it. And Mary seemed to work. So I asked her how it worked. And she said that with the material that she was cutting was very thin, and she said that when she tried it on cardstock, it did not cut so well. So I thought, ugh, so it probably has the same problem as this. So I ordered it. Yeah. What you might be wondering, not only did I ordered it, and when I was there, I ordered these 2 as well. So I basically ordered 3 dyes that I was expecting to not work well. You might wonder, what kind of crazy person does that? This kind of crazy person does that. Seriously, I don't even know why I do these sorts of things, but I guess I was pretty confident that I could figure out a solution. I know, it was an expensive, risky thing to do because maybe I wouldn't have been able to figure out a solution. But anyways, I was pretty confident. So I bought these 3 dyes and they all work fine. So I'm happy about that. This is how the heart die cuts out of Stampin' Up! Cardstock. Nice, crisp. And I love a manual die cut piece. I actually like working with manual die cut pieces a lot more than I enjoy working with a cameo. There's something about like there's something kind of satisfying of rolling it out, but also it gives this really nice pinched corner surface. I want to hold this really still, really close, so that you can see that it's just kind of like the edges on it are rounded. It's like it's been pinched off, and it looks just absolutely lovely. It's so pretty. I love it. This is my new favorite die. I love this die. So thank you, Mary, for turning me on to this die because I absolutely love it. The other nice thing about both of these dies, this die and this one, so these 2, is that you get this really nice confetti out of it. So for the hearts, you get this little selection of little, oh, some of them aren't hearts because there's some spaces in there that cut out too, like just the negative space, but you get this little confetti hearts, and the hearts are really nicely punched out too with the little pinched edges. I don't know if you know what I mean when I'm saying pinched. I'm not sure if that's the best word to use, but the edges sort of round off instead of being sliced. So you get that confetti, not this one, that's from another one, but you get that confetti when you use these dies, and then this is the confetti that you get with the other one. Cute, huh? You could just sprinkle that on your layout or put it in a little pocket or throw it in the garbage if you don't want to use it. That's fine too. So this die is from Simon Says Stamped. I think I saw this one still there, so you can still buy this one. This one is there as well. Then I also got this, and I thought that this would look really, really cool cut out of watercolor paper. I'm not sure if watercolor paper might be too thick to cut through, but I'm going to give it a try. But this is how it looks cut out of regular cardstock. And again, this is Stampin' Up! Cardstock, so it's pretty thick cardstock. So it looks kind of like that. These roses are so cute. I love these scribbly roses. I'm not much into florals, but I really like these kinds of flowers. So that's what it looks like. And I'll give it a try out of watercolor paper or maybe just a mixed media paper or something. And then I just couldn't resist getting this one. And I've been looking for, this is how this one cuts. I'll tell you the names of these dies in a second. I just have to look at the packaging and see if the names are on them. So I've been looking for something that's sort of delicate and pretty and very detailed to stick out of my layers every here and there. And I have a little punch that looks like a leaf, but I've been looking for something a little bit more than just one leaf. So I think this, even just this part here, would look kind of cute sticking out of things every here and there, and maybe in white. And then you could always watercolor it or mist it or change it in whatever way you want. So the name of this die is Stacked Hearts, and this is the package. So it's called Stacked Hearts, and that's what it looks like. The name of the rose is Single Roses. The name of the other one is Love Bouquet. And then the name of the original one that I always had that thought didn't work, and it turns out it does, Hexagon Border. It's called Hexagon Border. It's just the name is in a different place. So Hexagon Border is that one. Oops, throwing things around. So this is a little book of watercolor paper that I bought at the art store. This is very thick paper. I would be shocked if it cuts through this. Like really shocked, because yeah, I don't think it's gonna work. It definitely, I'm really doubting that it would work on something as tiny and fine as this. But this is a little bit thicker, so like more bold of a cutout. So we'll give it a try. I mean, I don't think that the height of the blade in this is as thick as this paper is, but we'll see. So this is Strathmore watercolor paper that I'm using. Let's see. And if this doesn't cut, it won't be because of shimming. It'll be because the paper is just thicker than the die is. Oh, let's see. It's a little hard to put through there. Let's see what we got. Look at this, it cut. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be gorgeous. Oh my goodness, it cut. It cut, and it cut really nicely. There's just a couple spots here where it didn't cut so well. So I'm gonna get all these pieces out, and then let's watercolor this and see how it looks. I can't wait to see how it looks. I never do this kind of stuff on video, like my first time playing with something. It's exciting. So the tip that I have for taking out the negative space when it's not fully cut all the way through is to push the negative space backwards instead of pulling it forwards, because if you pull it forwards and then it's attached and it tears a little bit, you're tearing the finished nice surface that you're going to be seeing, whereas if you pull it backwards and it rips a little bit as you, oh, that one didn't rip, but see how that ripped a little bit? It's on the back surface, so it doesn't really matter. I can just trim that off with my scissors or pull it off with my fingers like I just did, and the front surface of it is still really pretty and nicely finished. So I'm going to do some watercoloring, and let's see how these look. Alright, so I just have my craft mat here. This is my non-stick craft mat, and I have my die cut pieces that have been cut out of watercolor paper. And the reason I tried cutting these out of watercolor paper instead of just white cardstock is so that they could be sturdier and hold up against some watercolor paints. So I'm actually going to play with my Tim Holtz distressed crayons because I haven't really played very much with them. I've only used them a couple of times since I got them. So I have a green and I have a pink here. I only bought one set of them. I bought the bright colored set, whatever that one is called. And so what I think I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to just put some color on my mat like that. And I don't know exactly how much to use because I'm not really familiar with using these crayons. I've only used them a couple of times. I'm going to put some green down and I'm going to put some pink down. And I don't expect that I need a whole lot in order to color such a tiny little thing. I have my water brush here, which I just bought some Prima ones, but I thought I would give this one a try because I had one in my stash that never worked. Something must have been wrong in the barrel right here because no matter how much you pressed it and weighted, the water wouldn't flow. So what a water brush is you fill the barrel here, the reservoir, with water, and it holds the water up there, and then when you press this place here that says press, it releases some of the water into this channel right here that goes around and around, and then into this. I think there's a piece of foam or something kind of absorbent in there, and that fills up with water, and then it kind of drips down and gets your brush nice and wet. And I don't know if you can tell, but it's this one works, whereas my other one didn't. So there's water right there. I'm not entirely sure if you can even see that there's water there. But I'm going to create a little pool of paint, and I'm going to paint this. It's very, very light, so I probably added too much water. It's super duper duper light, so I probably do have too much water. I'm going to get a paper towel. Just going to try that again. This time I'll use less water. There we go. And so there's already some water on this little leaf. So I mostly just picked up pigment with my brush, not all that much water. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. There we go. Those are pretty. Just to get my brush running clear, I'm just squeezing some water through it and wiping it on my towel, and you'll see that it is running clear now. It's not green anymore. So that means that now I can play with the pink. I'm going to try a slightly different technique here for the pink. I'm going to try just kind of rubbing the pigment right onto the flower, like that. And now I'm going to get my little water mister thingy. And this is just a Tombow water mister. doesn't work nearly as well. Well, now you see that that technique doesn't work all that well. Let's try picking up some paint and painting it that way. Alright, so let's try this one. So I started in the middle with the darkest pigment because I had a feeling that as I worked my way out it would get lighter and lighter, and I thought that might look cool to have it kind of gradually get lighter as I worked my way to the outside of the rose. And when I pick this up, I'm not going to want to necessarily start where I left off because I don't want it to be brighter. There, that's pretty cool. I quite like that. That is quite nice. It's showing up as whiter on my screen right now than what it really is in real life, so now this is the one that I kind of ruined by putting the dry pigment on it. I just wanted to try that out because I know there have been times when I've worked with similar products. I mean, these are brand new, these Tim Holtz watercolor crayons, but I do have a set of watercolor crayons that are just like the classic old-fashioned kind of watercolor crayons, and I use them in my art journaling every once in a while, and I just apply them to the watercolor paper and then I just kind of smear them around. Maybe I should have smeared it with my finger before I added the water, just to kind of like smooth it out or something. Yeah, that's making it look a little bit better. So it definitely has a different look than when you just use the watercolor technique. But these are very pretty. So the other thing that I forgot to say is that these kinds of dies are made with these little connections between the main pieces that you could bend them apart and take them off so that these can each be individual pieces. That way you could lay these two on a piece of green cardstock and these two on a piece of pink cardstock, run them through, and with one pass get them colored the way that you want them to be. However, I really like to leave mine together. That's just the way I am with these kinds of dies. I feel like I'm going to lose these two if I take them apart. If I ever have a time where I need to use them separately, I probably will just snap them apart. But for now, because I'm mostly thinking that I'm going to use these with watercolor paper, I'm just going to leave them all together. So just for out of curiosity, let's see if the heart die will cut through watercolor paper too. Same manufacturer, so I'm thinking maybe it might work. All right, it looks nice and pillowy. Let's see. You know what? Even if you didn't cut it out, that looks quite nice just for a textured background. Even if you just left it like that and used that as a layer, it's so pretty and pillowy. let's see how we can get this thing out of here. Yeah, it's not quite cutting quite as well with the watercolor paper as it did with the cardstock, but that is expectable. I wouldn't have thought that these were really designed to cut with such thick cardstock. I mean, watercolor paper is exceptionally thick. It's not your standard art supply, or, well, it's not your standard scrapbooking paper anyways. So let's see how we can do with this. So I've removed all the little negative space pieces in between my hearts, but I left the heart in the die cut piece. And I'm going to try something a little bit different for watercoloring this one. I'm going to use one of these Ken Oliver Crafts Color Burst, and I've used these before, and it is a concentrated powder pigment, and what you do with it is you put a little bit of water on your mat, and with this, a little tiny bit goes quite a long way. So you just, that's probably more than what I needed. I'm just grabbing this brush that I was already using earlier today. Oh my, look at that. That is pretty. And what I'm hoping will happen with this is that, yeah, and it is that the watercolor will sink in between the heart outline and the heart, in between the lines of where the die cut happened, and it will emphasize. So what's happening here is what I was hoping would happen, which is that the watercolor liquid is kind of pooling up around where the die cut made its cuts. I'm just kind of coaxing it to sink into the paper a little bit, because it's kind of pulling up on the surface more than what I want it to. Oh, this is so pretty. Isn't that nice? And you can kind of dab off some of it with a paper towel to get a softer look, or you can just let it sink into the paper and dry that way, and you'll get a darker look. So we'll keep this side a little on the darker side, so it's a bit of an ombre effect. It goes from light over here to dark over there. Ooh, that's so pretty. Look at that. So here's what it looks like up close and personal. It's so pretty. This is the hero of the day. She found the mouse and guarded it until my husband could come home and get it and let him out. The mouse was released back into the wilderness. This one is not much of a catcher of mice, but she definitely found it. So here are some pictures of some of these die cuts, and I just placed them on some 3x4 cards by Ellie's Studio just so that you could get a sense of what they would look like on a Project Life card. They're the perfect scale. There's still a mouse in my room, so as I narrate this, I am not entirely happy, and my cat is going a little crazy as if she sees something. So anyhow, this is what they look like. And I really love how they look, especially the heart one. I love how variable it is. This is me narrating right now. There's a mouse in my room, and I hope that we find it. Anyhow, here is my Facebook group. Feel free to join us if you want to have a chat and see and share your work with us.